Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we will be exploring Fort Tejon State Historic Park in Southern California. Located in the Grapevine Canyon off exit 210 on I-5, Fort Tejon is about 76 miles northwest of Los Angeles. The first stop you'll likely make upon arriving is in the Visitor Center, which provides information about the park and the backstory of Fort Tejon. As of this video, the Visitor Center is open daily, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Speaking of, Fort Tejon wasn't an actual fort, but rather an army outpost. It was established in 1854 by the US government to protect the influx of new gold rush settlers from local Native Americans and to ease tensions between the two groups. Some of the natives in this area of California included the Migdiano and Paiute, as well as displaced tribes living in the nearby Sebastian Indian Reservation. After you enter the park over here and check out the History and Visitor Center over here, there's a bunch more buildings to explore on the grounds, so let's go check them out. These buildings here are the guard room and the jailhouse, and I'm telling you, I would not want to be stuck in here during the fort's heyday. The jail was used by the troops to house prisoners and provided no ventilation and little sunlight. The guardhouse has a long wooden bunk that would sleep 6 men. Guards would serve 24-hour shifts watching over the prisoners. For the rest of the video, we'll be traveling counterclockwise around the park from the jailhouse and visiting every major building and point of interest, starting with a certain grave. One of the biggest mysteries that exists to this day at Fort Tejon is about this man, Peter Lebec. Not much is actually known about him, except that he died in 1837 by a bear attack, most likely a grizzly. Lebec's grave was discovered decades later in 1890 thanks to an inscription on this very oak tree. Theories suggest he may have been a Catholic French-Canadian fur trapper, but this is still unconfirmed. What is known is that the nearby town of Lebec is named after him. As we look over the original orderly's quarters here, we'll talk about another famous piece of Fort Tejon's lore, its camels. In the mid-19th century, the US Army experimented with using camels as a cheaper and more efficient alternative to horses and mules as the country expanded its territory westward. In November 1859, 28 camels were turned over to Fort Tejon before they were transferred to Los Angeles the following year. The Army's camel experiment proved to be a failure, as they were not only very expensive to feed and maintain, but they also provided no significant advantage when it came to transportation or delivering goods. The most impressive building at Fort Tejon is the officers' quarters. It's a 2-story building, and its rooms have been meticulously decorated to reflect what life was like back in the mid-19th century. More specifically, the rooms reflect what it was like when Captain John W. Gardiner was living at the fort with his family. The first floor includes the parlor and dining room. As we head up to the second floor, we can observe Gardiner and his wife Annie's bedroom. Across the hall is their son Robert's bedroom. He was born at Fort Tejon in September 1855. Robert shared his room with the servant of the house. Aside from its association with the Army, Fort Tejon is most closely associated with the 1857 Fort Tejon earthquake. On January 9th at about 8:20 a.m. of that year, a massive earthquake with an approximate 7.9 magnitude occurred along the San Andreas Fault. It's considered the highest magnitude earthquake recorded in California's history. Despite Fort Tejon being nearly 100 miles away from the epicenter, the earthquake was soon named after the fort since it was the most notable settlement within the area to be damaged. Much of the region was still undeveloped and sparsely populated at that time. This structure here is the quartermaster building, and unfortunately it was locked, so I couldn't explore the inside. Hopefully this is something that'll open up in the future. This long building is the barracks where the soldiers stayed, and this is my favorite building on the park just because there's a lot of really cool historical artifacts inside. Many of the artifacts include uniforms, weapons, and everyday items used by the 1st U.S. Dragoons, the 1st Regiment stationed here. After the Civil War broke out, the Dragoons stationed at Fort Tejon were transferred to Los Angeles in 1861 and eventually to the east. The fort would be reoccupied instead by California volunteer troops. The last major place I want to highlight is this grave of 6 men who served at Fort Tejon. This can be found along the service road when walking towards the park's campgrounds. When we look back at the map of Fort Tejon, you'll see there's a number of buildings listed that we didn't explore, and there's a good reason for that. There are a number of fenced-off areas throughout the park where buildings used to stand and that hopefully one day may actually be reconstructed. So for example, this area behind me is the officers' quarters. Fort Tejon closed for good in 1864, only a decade after its founding. The Fort Tejon State Park was established in 1940 after the land was gifted from the Tejon Ranch Company to the state of California. Overall, Fort Tejon is a great pit stop for anyone looking for a break on their travels through I-5. Parking tickets are only $6 and the park is open most days of the year. There are also special events like Civil War enactments held here and listed on their website. Link is in the description. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and check out my last video on Mission Santa Clara de Assis. Happy history!